The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 88, recorded on Friday, May 12th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
I get why they would have to take his shirt off, I guess, because he messed up his arm. But why did they have to take Link's pants?
I was gonna make the joke about it. You took it from me. You're such a jerk. Happy Tears of a Kingdom release day for all those who celebrate.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we will talk about school choice and why that choice is a bad one. But we have lunch out to play, so let's get to the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Well, it's finally happened. We have avoided talking about mass shootings for quite a long time.
I mean, we were just gone for a long time, too.
Right.
So.
We didn't talk about any of we barely kind of mentioned the Nashville shooting. We didn't mention the rash of shootings that were getting reporting from people like accidentally knocking on the wrong door or pulling into the wrong driveway.
Yep.
But we're finally here. We're going to have to talk about the Texas mall shooting.
So in Allen, Texas, a man walked into a mall filled with tactical gear, AR-15s, and a handgun and started shooting wildly, killing 8 people and wounding 7 before being killed by a police officer who was actually there for a separate reason. Gotta love all those good guys with the guns that stopped this, right?
Right. It completely negated this. It was taken care of. There happened to be a police officer in the area. As we know, police officers in Texas, really good track record when it comes to this sort of thing, and problem solved.
A little bit about the shooter himself. He was discharged from the Army for mental health reasons. Apparently, he was only there for about 3 months before he was discharged.
That's a good sign.
And he was a far-right extremist. He wore a patch that was found after he was killed on the scene, with an RWDS, which stands for Right Wing Death Squad, was found on his tactical gear.
As well as a Punisher logo.
Of course.
Of course.
Jesus. And for those who don't know, the RWDS patch is actually also worn by Proud Boys members, the same ones who stormed the Capitol.
You mean the Antifa soldiers?
Yes. Further investigation into his social media account also showed Nazi and white supremacist views, a bunch of right-wing troll posts, including posts from the Libs of TikTok channel and Tim Pool.
Yeah, he seemed to be a very, very online right-wing troll. Pretty much the same people that whenever they say they're going to do stuff like this, everyone just says that they're just trolling, they're just doing it for the lulz.
So what do conservatives say in the wake of another right-wing mass shooting? It's a literal psyop, of course. That's what they have to say, because they can't even admit their own putrid garbage that they spew every single night is actually pushing people to do these types of things.
Yeah, that their own rhetoric is to blame here. This is one of their people. This is one of their viewers, one of their listeners, somebody who is part of the extreme right-wing sphere.
So let's go through now another conspiracy based on how, because of course Occam's razor just can't be used in any situation with these people at all. God forbid.
Whenever we have one of these mass shootings, it's always, it's a false flag operation by the government to try to take our guns away.
So let's talk about why this is supposedly a psyop. Number one, how can a Hispanic man also be a white supremacist?
I don't know, maybe ask Nick Fuentes or Enrique Tarrio or all of the other many.
I was literally just going to bring up Enrique Tarrio. I'm like,
yes.
You can have white supremacist viewpoints without being white. It's called a cult for a reason. You don't have to be explicitly that particular race to still engage with the cult mentality. I know people who were from my former cult who were also weirdly white nationalists, and they were Filipino. But it's because based on how their culture in this cult viewed things, they adored white people to a weird amount. It happens all the time.
Well, and especially when all of the views that they identify with are generally coming from people like Tucker Carlson, like Tim Pool, like the libs of TikTok. I forgot her name, Raycheck something.
Chaya Raycheck or something like that.
Right. So it's easy to lose your own identity in that when that's what you're surrounded with, is people constantly telling you that the Western civilization and what else, the Judeo-Christian values are the only thing holding civilization together. If you believe that, I don't think it matters if you're Hispanic or black or white or any other Asian. If that's what you're hearing constantly and that's what you identify with, those are going to be your views.
Right. I mean, I do think Nick Fuentes is probably the perfect example of this too, because he literally started the whole Groyper movement, for God's sakes.
Right. One of the most racist, misogynistic people there is, and his last name is Fuentes. So yes, it certainly is possible and happens every day.
So that was stupid. Why else do they think that this is a weird cover-up psyop? Well, because the media profile that they got for this guy is obviously fake.
Right. It's off of a Russian website, Joe.
So, but how do we know for sure that this social media profile is actually the gunman's? Well, I have a quote from the BBC where they did an investigation into this guy's social media history, and they say, quote, Garcia appeared to use the account on a social network popular in Russia as an online diary. He posted multiple documents, including his name, date of birth, and other identifying details, including a plane ticket, a speeding ticket, and an ID card.
He posted pictures of his tattoos, the gear that he used for this mass shooting.
Well, and also the mall that he was scoping out.
Right. Very convenient, right? That's going to be the next retort.
Well, of course it is.
Yep.
Because there's no actual way of proving to these people that this is what it is. It's just always constantly moving the goalpost.
I mean, he literally posted every step along the way that he was going to do this. And yes, it was an obscure Russian website where there's no moderation.
Right.
It's what Elon Musk wants Twitter to be, although he also wants to make money, so it's completely incompatible. But that's what happens. And no one's watching it until after the fact. And then we can say, hey, we really should have seen this coming, but you can't monitor 8 billion people on social media every day to try to figure this stuff out. It's things like this that only come to light after you're researching a specific individual and you find these things out.
Well, and let's also bring this to light as well. The other claim was, well, because Tim Pool is, I think he's half Korean or something like that. Because Tim Pool is half Korean or he's actually just full on Korean. It doesn't matter. He's not fully white. So for a Korean guy who he posted stuff about, as well as libs of TikTok, the person is Jewish, then
so is
there'd
Ben
be
Shapiro.
No way.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Again, when you're espousing white nationalist rhetoric, it doesn't matter where that message is coming from.
No, not at all. I mean, I still think back to like my own route. This is kind of a little bit out there as a tangent, but I still think back to when my relatives, like during the heat of the 2020 election, were posting about how shitty politicians were, and there were op-eds by presidential candidates. So they're using people they hate, supposedly, to amplify a viewpoint that they agree with. And it's the exact same thing here. I think you hit it right in the head with Ben Shapiro. It doesn't matter who the person is, as long as you create a common enemy, that's who they're going to focus on. And the common enemy is like this liberal woke empire that they keep fear-mongering over every single day, that they feel that action needs to be taken. Well, this guy did action, for God's sakes.
Right. And even if you want to go from the other side, liberals' obsession with Liz Cheney during the January 6th hearings, just because one time in her life she wouldn't bow down to the Republican Party and spoke out against Donald Trump, did not negate everything else she's ever said or done before that. But we saw some people, they were praising her, extolling her. There was even talk about her being a viable third-party candidate.
Mm-hmm. And to make things even worse with this whole thing is all this was being perpetuated on Twitter. Because of course it is. That's the absolute hellscape that we have to live on in the internet days. And of course, the, well, now former CEO of Twitter, Elon Musk, was amplifying those conspiracy theories constantly, where he constantly retweeted them and tweeted at these people saying things like, didn't this story also come from @Bellingcat, which literally specializes in psychological operations? I don't want to hurt their feelings, but this is either the weirdest story ever or a very bad psyop.
Yep, there's your free speech warrior.
Pandering 100% to crazy right-wing conspiracies. That's what they're doing.
But he's not right-wing, Joe. Classical
no.
liberal.
Well, neither is Tim Pool. people, obviously, you know, they're classical liberals, of course, you know. And again, Occam's razor, Jason, I don't understand it. The point of a psyop is to accomplish something. What would be the point of this psyop?
Right. It's not like this is going to push for gun control, unfortunately.
No.
Like, this is happening like once a week.
But even more so, okay, so you had like the CIA come and say, okay, we had this horrible tragedy in Texas where this guy killed 8 people and he's a white guy, right? Yeah, he's a white guy. Okay. Let's use this to get at a YouTuber and a Twitter person.
Which will, again, do nothing.
No.
Overall.
But again, like that's how crazy and
make them
narcissistic.
look bad.
Right. How crazy and narcissistic do you have to be to think that the CIA frickin' A has to do an entire psyop to make you look bad?
The Christchurch shooter was a big Ben Shapiro fan. Does that hurt Ben Shapiro's career at all?
Of course not. And again, I'm even okay with saying that because there's a lot of people that are always saying like, well, this guy was a diehard Tim Pool fan. And obviously Tim Pool is railing against it because he only posted like 4 clips or something from like the same episode from him. And I'm okay with saying that we can't say for sure just from that evidence alone that he was a big Tim Pool fan. I'm okay with that. But what I think Tim Pool obviously missed or is intentionally missing is that I don't care if he's a fan or not. Your rhetoric is appealing to the people who want to do stuff like this. Like Jason, if we found out that we inspired and motivated a mass shooter, we probably have some reflecting to do.
Yeah, I would probably stop the show.
Right.
I'd be like, okay, it's not worth it at that point.
So that's the whole point, that Tim's stupid freaking beanie head couldn't get around through his thick skull. It doesn't matter if a person fits it directly into a box or not. Right-wing rhetoric is causing real damage, and we can see that happening right before our eyes. It's really gross, man. It makes me so angry.
And 8 people are dead, 7 people are injured. Lives will never be the same again. All of the people that were there, I mean, listening to some of the stories and like, we're not really going to get into it, but there was one kid that their mom, their dad, and their 3-year-old brother were all killed in the shooting. They're an orphan now. Like, that's someone who's a fan of your political speech does an act of terrorism like this based on the things that you say. And the only thing you can come up with is
it was a cover-up.
Right. This is fake. This is all fake news. You're a piece of garbage.
To make me look bad specifically.
Right. It's all about me. Really does sound a lot like our former president.
Hey, good coincidence. Let's talk about our former president. He had an interesting week. He did an incredibly perfect town hall on CNN.
Yeah, that CNN continues their right-wing slide in their desperate attempt to grasp for ratings by hosting a disgusting town hall with Donald Trump.
Oh, and I know at the time we talked, but we're not going to really cover it.
No.
Because it was stupid.
And it's nothing he hasn't said a million times before.
No, but did you just watch some of the highlights, man? It was insane.
A few of them, but...
How he even called like the interview like a nasty woman.
Right, and someone who was handpicked, a former Daily Caller reporter, handpicked to interview Trump because she was sympathetic. The entire crowd, they had 400 people, are all Republican or independent-leaning Republican voters. Just absolutely disgusting. It was just a handpicked cheering squad for him.
Yep.
Hooted and hollered. We'll get to here in a second, but well, we might as well bring it up. He lost his lawsuit against E. Jean Carroll. It's proven that he was civilly liable for sexual abuse and defamation, and he continued his disgusting attacks on her, calling her a liar, saying he doesn't know who she is.
Yep. At the town hall.
At the town hall. And nothing. Cheers from the crowd. No pushback at all from the host. If you needed an excuse to be done with CNN, even though we've told you over and over again, they are just a horrible, disgusting corporation, the same as Fox is. They only care about ratings. This should be the proof that you need and to not go to them for news anymore.
But what does it also say? That now you have the Republican frontrunner for president in 2024, who is now awaiting indictment on all the fraud charges, has now been found liable for sexual abuse and defamation, and you still want him to be your president?
Mm-hmm. They're still big fans.
This is where we are. I don't even know what to do anymore.
Yeah, no, I never would have believed 20 years ago if you told me this sequence of events would be be true, I would thought that you were insane.
Well, and it's even crazier when you think about it too, because all of this horrible publicity is boosting Trump. Not like in the national eye, like typical voters aren't seeing this, right? Like I think like the viewership of the CNN town hall was like 3 million people.
But still, there's so much more than the ratings that CNN normally gets.
No,
which is why they did this.
You're 100% correct. But what I'm trying to get at though is even 3 million people is nothing compared to the typical electorate. And the people who watch the town hall were probably partisans who wouldn't make up their minds anyway. I think that's perfectly fine to say.
Yeah, you're not really going to get too many people that don't care about politics that would want to watch this.
But what I'm more fascinated about is, so they're already partisans, but they're also like primary voters. And for some stupid reason, Trump is gaining in the polls over DeSantis as all this stuff is happening to him. And it's like, what is happening with these primary voters where they're saying like, yeah, I want the guy who now has been shown to sexually assault women and also committed fraud in the court of law. So I want him over the other exact crazy person who doesn't have all the baggage, which is insane to me.
And will never admit that he's ever done anything wrong in his entire life.
I know. Oh, Republicans are weird, man. What the hell?
Speaking of weird Republicans, why don't we talk about some updates with Tucker Carlson?
So as you know, we said goodbye to Tucker as Fox News kicked him to the curb, never to be seen again.
Get the Tuck out of here.
Sure. Well, the best part of that news was that Tucker Carlson was under contract until 2025 to not have any type of competing show on a channel or even his own network.
$20 million contract.
For a $20 million fee.
To do nothing.
To do nothing. And Tucker's now ready to go to war with Fox News over it.
This is the war I've been waiting for.
And it's just absolutely fascinating because now you're seeing all these leaked videos. I don't know if you saw any of them. I put the link in the show notes. But
nothing special, honestly.
I mean, for us, no, but it's hilarious to watch. Where Media Matters would just constantly keep releasing these leaked videos of Tucker Carlson to the point where Fox actually demanded them they cease and desist, and they just gave him the middle finger back. Or even the whole other video where he talked about how a bunch of white people just started beating up another person, and he started going about how, oh, that's so uncool. I don't like that at all. That's not how white men fight.
This is what is being pushed by Fox, saying, well, this is why we fired him, which I don't believe at all, because this is nothing compared to what Tucker has openly said on his show.
No kidding. So what's Tucker Carlson going to do now? Well, he made a tweet this last week saying he is now going to take his new show at the cost of $20 million to where else but Twitter.
Yeah, all of the people that watch long-form programming on Twitter.
Actually, I was listening to an interview today about how BuzzFeed did try to do a Twitter show, and they specifically couldn't get it to work. Why? Because no one goes to Twitter to watch long-form content.
And it's not set up for that kind of bandwidth usage either.
Right.
I mean, I know Elon Musk will overwork the few employees that he has left that are on work visas that can't leave the company, otherwise they'll get kicked out of the country. He will force them to basically prop up the platform for Tucker Carlson because Elon Musk is totally not a conservative at all and is not specifically sympathetic to the types of things Tucker Carlson says.
Hey, he also invited Don Lemon to come on too.
Yeah, progressive stalwart.
Real centrist. Wants all points of view.
So I'm sure it will somewhat work, or at least better than it has when other people have tried to do this in the past, but you're still not going to get any viewers.
Well, and how's he going to get paid on this?
Yeah, I don't know how they count views. It's different, and people just have stuff on in the background. Does that count, as they're scrolling through Twitter? Does that count as a view? And how long do you have to watch it before it's counted as a view, and how is the payout going to work? I'm sure Elon will work something out personally with Tucker on the side, something that nobody else would get as some kind of incentive to be on the platform that is failing, that he spent $44 billion on. But I just don't I see Tucker Carlson going the way of Glenn Beck and
Bill O'Reilly. Of course. And that's what he's going to end up doing too. Because while there will be people who will flock to Tucker Carlson to do whatever his thing is, that's what they did with Bill O'Reilly. That's what they did with Glenn Beck. And he'll have some kind of following, but it won't be the 3 million people a night night he had on Fox News.
No, and it'll be heavily boosted by Twitter. You won't be able to not see it if you go on Twitter, but...
Oh, and that's going to be really good for all the people who just want to go on for other stuff on Twitter.
Right. But yeah, it's not going to be the same. He's not going to have the same influence, and those are exactly the things that we were saying that we welcome going forward. I'm glad that he's going this route, because it's really not a good idea, and I'm happy for him.
So let's bring it back home. The good state of Wisconsin, where nothing bad happens. We got the Packers, we got the Brewers, we got crazy lawmakers who are saying that there are literal demons in the state capitol. A little background. You may not have heard of this guy, but he's been on a roll. His name is Sean Feucht. Feucht? I don't know, and I don't care.
If you say it a different way, I'm going to have to bleep it out, but it could be that way.
No, there's the E in there. You got to go like Feucht or Feucht. I don't care. He is a Christian musician and now an outspoken Christian political activist and Christian nationalist.
Yay. Well, Tommy Tuberville will be a fan.
Of course he is. And just to make sure you know he's a Christian nationalist, we're not just putting that label upon him. Hell hates it that we're worshiping at capitals across America. That's why we get called, well, you're a Christian nationalist. You want the kingdom to be the government. Yes. You want God to come and overtake the government. Yes. You want Christians to be the only ones. Yes, we do. We want God to be in control. We want believers to be the ones writing the laws. Yes, guilty as charged. So outspoken Christian nationalist doing his...
Dominionist.
Yeah, doing his Kingdom at the Capitol music tour, where he literally goes from state capital to state capital and performs a Christian music concert in front of like 10 crazy people.
Yeah, I could, in Madison, can you imagine?
Oh my God.
That would be fun.
I'm so angry. I missed it that day. I wanted to be there. I was so upset. And then just spew nonsense for like an hour and then they go home.
It would just be like our state legislators there, no one else.
So like we said, Feucht stopped in Wisconsin on Wednesday to hold a concert outside the Capitol. After giving the same mantra about how it's good to be a Christian nationalist, like you just heard, and that God should be writing our laws, I guess, State Representative Chuck Wickers came on stage to give his own speech.
A local guy. I've seen Witchkers, or however you pronounce it, signs around here.
Quote, when it comes to this building, there's demons in those walls. The only way they go away is by prayer. That's the only way. And when you're not here, those demons are laughing at you for not being here. They're saying, go away. We'll give you the laws that you want. We'll violate the 10 commandments. We'll do whatever it takes to make you guys think you're happy.
What else do they say, Chuck? What else are they telling you?
They're all laughing. They're all going to laugh at you. He goes on to say, mental disease is on the rise.
It sure is.
It has proliferated in this nation. It's the number one issue in the state of Wisconsin and in this country.
And at this podium.
How did it get this bad so fast? Godless laws that Republicans and Democrats are giving you because that's what you wanted as a society.
Democracy, then?
I have no idea what the point he's trying to make.
So it's both Republicans and Democrats and the people.
Right. It's like,
okay.
He's trying to make a whole thing about like, you did this. You all suck. You did this. That's why there are literal demons in these walls. Like,
start building a boat, Chuck.
What is going on? So you know that our state government's in good hands, and we're gonna...
Yeah, the people that are here, demons talking to them.
Yeah, we're gonna call the Ghostbusters real soon to fumigate our state capital. And in some final good news, Anthony DeVolder
/ Katara Revanche
/ volleyball star / dog enthusiast / multi-millionaire dude,
producer of the Spider-Man Broadway play.
Did he? No,
yes,
no,
yes,
he did
yes,
not.
yes,
He absolutely did not.
He claimed to be the producer of the Spider-Man Enter the Dark.
Why? That didn't even end well.
No, it didn't.
Why did he lie about that?
Why does he lie about everything in his life? I don't know.
George Santos has been charged by the Justice Department on 13 counts. Oh boy.
7 counts of wire fraud related to campaign financing and unemployment insurance, 3 counts of money laundering related to political contributions, 2 counts of making false statements to the House of Representatives, relying on financial disclosure forms. Sounds like he should have actually run to be on the Supreme Court. Instead of in the House of Representatives, he would have gotten away with it. And 1 count of theft of public funds for fraudulently applying for and receiving getting unemployment insurance during the pandemic. And ironically, George Anthony Katara happens to be one of the 35 co-sponsors of a House bill that would make it easier for states to recover fraudulent pandemic unemployment benefits.
You can't. This is a troll. Like we are witnessing a glitch in the matrix. That's what we have to be doing, right? There's no other way around it. And let's talk about some of these. So the wire fraud and unemployment insurance. This kind of also stems back to the pandemic stuff, where he was also taking unemployment insurance as well, along with the PPP loans for himself, while he was simultaneously working at a supposed investment firm,
which was actually a pyramid scheme,
making over $129,000 a year. And dude had to also rip off the government for like an extra $40,000.
Right. He's a very honest person.
And then also for the money laundering of the political campaign contributions, he also took campaign donations to help fund luxury trips as well as car payments.
Right. He paid off like some of his bills.
Yeah. This is just so insane. And the best part of the whole thing is, while talking with reporters, Santos, of course, had to deny all of this and all that happened and calls it a witch hunt.
Yes. Oh, I've never heard that one before. And he also whatabouted Hunter Biden. Like, you know how I know this is ridiculous? Because the entire Biden family and reporters around him start heckling him because it's so ridiculous that he just refuses to take any responsibility for his own actions. It's like everyone knows he is a serial liar at this point. I mean, everything's been in the news for months, ever since before he even went into the House of Representatives, that nothing that he has said to anyone has been the truth. And he still just cannot stop.
Oh, no. Oh, George, what are you doing? Arthur, what are you doing? What's your real name, man?
So Kevin McCarthy's definitely going to kick him out of the Republican caucus, right?
Oh, of course he will. Absolutely not. He even said as much, too, where he said, well, we need to let Representative Santos deal with his own legal battles on his own. I'm going to respect his right to have his own legal battles.
Oh, I'm sorry. What are you doing right now in the House? Oh, doing 15 hearings on Hunter Biden's laptop. Someone who's never actually been charged with a crime, but your own representative who's been charged with 13 felonies and counting. This isn't for us to say anything. We have to let the legal process bear out here.
Oh, God forbid. He did say something along the lines of, if he violated Congress's code of ethics or something like that, then he may consider taking him on removal or asking him to resign. Like, good for you, Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, if he had said something like, I don't know, Palestinians are under an apartheid by Israel, then he'd be kicked out immediately.
Hey, I mean, George Santos was on the Israeli-Palestinian line for years, man. I mean,
he is a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, all the Peace Corps trips that he clearly did.
Yeah. So just remember, Republicans have no morals or ethics when it comes to their own behavior.
Nope, not one. Not a bit. Not one ethic or moral.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
This week for Foxed in the Head. Have we had Matt Walsh on? We had to, yes.
He's definitely appeared here before.
Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire says that you can never be fully manly on ice skates.
While cosplaying as a lumberjack.
Okay, so we need to talk about this. I know this is an audio medium, but pull up this video again. Like, we don't have to play it. I just want to look at him again. Does that now look like the most, like, frumpy, beta-looking dude?
I mean, he's a nerd, right? Matt Walsh got beat up in high school.
Absolutely. And this is coming from someone who is also a dork. Like, it's okay. Embrace your dorkiness. It's fine. But why are you, Matt Walsh, of all people, talking about what manliness is?
He's dressed up in a Bob Vila Halloween costume.
So this was all during his show while he was destroying the NFL and the NHL with facts and logic because they were having pride nights. And now they're evil woke corporations because they acknowledge that gay people exist.
He said that 30 years ago, you could have said that the NFL and NHL were manly, but ever since the NHL has been doing Pride Nights, they've given up that claim. But really, you can't honestly be manly on figure skates because that's too. And you know he wanted to say gay. He said flailing.
He said dainty. He was
flailing for another word, so he didn't say gay. And just outright say, like, just because he's a homophobe.
Of course he is.
Or at least plays one on TV. He said dainty. You're too dainty on any kind of ice skates because figure skaters wear ice skates, even though they're two different types, but whatever. Matt Walsh doesn't know anything about sports. Let's just put that out there.
Well, that too. But I think that's like a big distinction we need to make right now because with people like Matt Walsh and all these other types of like supposed alpha douchebags is you can see how easy triggered they get for just nothing. They will throw away entire sports, which are supposed to be like the manliest thing you can do, just because they do one night where it's for a group that you supposedly don't like. Their hatred is that big that they're going to go on and say like, oh, actual football players are not manly anymore because they do Pride Night and they wear rainbows once. It's fine. Like rainbows are fine.
Right. And really, I mean, he says, well, the NFL hasn't done that, which he's wrong. As we looked up, the Washington Commanders have had a Pride Night. It doesn't happen that much in the NFL because Pride Month is not a month that the NFL is doing anything. It's in the off season. Otherwise, those teams desperate for that extra cash, they could have another alternate jersey to sell and merchandise. They would 100% do it because that's what it's about at the end of the day.
Of course.
That's what happens in the NHL. They have warm-up jerseys that players come out in and then they auction them off. And they can sell those alternate jerseys for merchandise, and players still protest and don't do it. There's news stories every year about that. But yes, that makes the entire sport unmanly to Matt Walsh because they do things to pander to the LGBTQ community, and he does not like that. So that makes it not manly. Okay. Again, Matt Walsh does not watch sports. Anyway, it's very clear. Anytime he's ever talked about sports, I think we had him on for the Super Bowl one, and he specifically mentioned that he doesn't watch football.
Well, and again, you can just see like how insecure these people are. Well, I shouldn't say people. These men are about their own sexuality.
Now, this is toxic masculinity.
Yeah,
it's the very definition.
But it's specifically insecure toxic masculinity because here's the thing, Jason. I play sports. I go to the gym. I have a good time. I would say I am a very like cis het dude. Like that's who I am, right? I would rock a rainbow, man. It's fine. I've rocked rainbows before. They're fine. And guess what? I've never walked around town saying, oh, do they think I'm guy? Do they think I'm gay? Because guess what? When you're actually comfortable with your own sexuality, it doesn't freaking matter. If you actually are a real man and know that you can be who you are and be just fine with that, then it doesn't matter.
Honestly, this whole conversation, the definition of manliness, I mean, has nothing to do with anything that Matt Walsh is talking about, anything that he has ever been in his life. Obviously, you look at the guy.
Right.
But
you made me look at him again. Why did you do that?
I mean, yes, I played football in grade school and high school. I played with someone who went on to be in the NFL, and nobody was ever like, "What color shirts are you wearing?" We gotta see what's going on here. That's the true measure of performance in the sport is your fashion sense, or what's on the jersey.
I was say what jersey you wear for God's sake.
Nobody cares.
Oh, Matt Walsh. I was gonna say never change, but for the love of God, please change. You're a terrible human being.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
So this week on our main segment, we're going to talk about school choice. Obviously, the Republicans have been talking a lot about school choice for the last how many years now. And this whole thing got started based on an article that I shared with you, Jason. And I think it was just a really good launching off point. So I want to talk about this article. I want to talk about what school vouchers actually are, why people like them, and why they actually suck. Does that sound good to you?
Sure.
All right.
I want to start off with just some background. Specifically, school choice is a big topic in Wisconsin. In Milwaukee, the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program was founded in 1990, is the oldest school choice voucher program in the United States.
So I think that's something to think about too. Like these are not super well established programs. Like these are not from like the 50s to 60s here.
Right. School choice as a concept has been around for that long, but like the modern voucher programs
correct
are not. And school choice honestly began during desegregation.
Yep.
And it became a way for white families to get their kids away from desegregated schools and back into all white schools. So that's the history of school choice, is literally racism and white flight away from schools that were allowing black students. But let's talk about the more modern system. The voucher program, like we said, began in Milwaukee. It began with 341 students in 7 schools. It's now grown to more than 28,000 students at 131 schools just in the city of Milwaukee, and 45,000 students at 343 schools throughout the state. It was mainly championed by Howard Fuller, who, I don't know if you've seen any of his background, used to be a black radicalist Marxist who established an all-black school in South Carolina before. And that Howard Fuller sounds like a cool guy. The Howard Fuller that I've seen here in Milwaukee, not so much. And the guy pushing for school choice here in Milwaukee would actually become the superintendent of Milwaukee Public Schools from 1991 to 1995, which to me is crazy. The guy saying, hey, public schools just aren't working. We need to have a different system. You need to get your kids out of public schools and into private schools, and the government needs to pay for it. Put me in charge of the public schools.
No kidding.
And we did. Today, there are 32 private schools in Wisconsin that have their entire student bodies publicly funded with school vouchers. So they're private schools that every single student is getting public money.
Correct.
So they're essentially private in name only. They are public schools. They're fully funded by taxpayers, but yet they're private schools. They don't have to follow the same rules and regulations that truly public schools do.
But what are exactly school vouchers? Well, if you don't know, states will send money to public schools to educate kids or indoctrinate them if you watch Fox News. The amount of money a school receives is calculated to a cost per student, or a per pupil cost, basically. During 2022, Wisconsin spent about $12,740 per student, according to a Wisconsin Policy Forum report. And actually, that same report shows that Wisconsin lags behind the rest of the country, which spent around $13,494 per student. The report also shows that Wisconsin was actually doing well compared to the rest of the country until 2010, and I don't know if you want to look it up, Jason, you can actually see the graph yourself. I'll put in the show notes as well. You'll see a really nice, just straight down dip in 2010, and then we are just below the average ever since. You want to know who the governor was at that time? It was Scott Walker, of course, uber Republican, and who hated public schools with a burning passion.
Specifically the teachers union.
Exactly. Oh, and also the report did show that decreases in school funding exactly mirrored the tax cuts Republicans and former Governor Scott Walker pushed through, which basically resulted in a loss of $2.5 billion in revenue and just gutted all that from our public school system, which left it to rot. Anyway, back to school vouchers. Rather than giving the per pupil cost to public schools, voucher programs essentially give parents a coupon to spend at a private school, kind of like what Jason said before. It's typically designed to help low-income families afford private school tuition, because we know how much private school tuition costs. But why do people actually argue in favor of voucher programs? And I want to do my best, Jason, to steel man this the best we can. I don't want to do straw man. I don't want to do BS here.
I mean, you gave probably the biggest, if it worked out this way, the biggest thing, right? Allow low-income families to afford private school tuition.
Correct. That's the goal, at least, right? Well, the biggest argument for voucher programs is to get kids out of failing public schools. You can think of the amount of scrutiny that Milwaukee Public Schools gets, or Chicago Public Schools, or any other urban school, because it always has to be an urban school, by the way. I wonder why. Is under. And how people want voucher money to send their kids elsewhere. In some cases, I actually don't blame people for arguing this. There are plenty of public schools that are underfunded and not good environments for students. However, I believe it goes at the problem the wrong way, which brings us to the whole reason why voucher programs are bad to begin with. I'll also quote from former Republican candidate for governor, Tim Michels. We talked about him in earlier episodes, where he wanted to unleash his universal school choice program. And he says this is why voucher programs are good. Quote, competition is a good motivator. In our business, if we're not innovating every day, we're losing. We are going to create competition. We are going to improve education. And we are going to make sure that future generations of Wisconsinites have the skills to be leaders in this state.
Let me just remind everybody everybody that Tim Michaels joined his family's company when he was in his late 30s and was immediately made a vice president at that company. And we'll talk about innovation and competition and how the private sector is this a meritocracy and is somehow better than the public sector when it's just a
Myth?
well, it's a monarchy, right? I mean, it's the Michaels Corporation. Oh, you know who the best candidate to be our next VP is? My brother. I mean, give me a break. And then you talk about innovation and how you need competition to grow.
Well, so let's talk about that. Before we move on to why at least I believe voucher schools are bad, can we at least address this whole competition is good for schools thing? Because I used to believe this, by the way, back in the day, like when I was in college. I did believe that, like, well, yeah, why would you not want like competition win and you have the best ideas win out and the best schools win out?
Because there's a loser, and those are children.
And that's exactly the point, right? Because number one, how do you define what a successful school is? Usually it's by standardized test scores, which have been shown to be not a good representation of how a school should be running. And number two, you don't want losers in education, because when you have a loser in education, who gets hurt? The students who are just trying to go to school.
And not to mention, we talk about, and I'm sure we'll get to it as we go into why school vouchers are a bad idea, but specifically when you talk about standardized testing, what charter and private schools do when they know the standardized testing is coming up is expel all of their poor students. That would bring their scores down.
Yeah.
And public schools cannot do that.
Correct. Well, you got into a reason why voucher schools are bad, so let's get into it then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why are voucher schools bad? Well, easy start. It's public money for private schools. I'm just going to say that again to make sure everyone gets it. It's public money for private schools.
For-profit, non-secular, religious indoctrination schools.
Well, and actually, I'm glad you brought up the word secular, because when voucher programs first started, at least in Wisconsin, they only included secular private schools initially. But, that's all been done away with now, because that's ridiculous. Now in Milwaukee, over 90% of all voucher schools are religious. And on the flip side of that, voucher programs absolutely defunds public schools. Remember when we were talking about how public schools were being underfunded? Well, yes, their funding doesn't change. If anything else, their per pupil funding goes down because students are taking that money to private institutions instead. So now you have underfunded schools who are now being more underfunded and lacking even more resources, and just starts a huge death spiral.
Right. Those schools that don't have the funding, they get poor teacher performance, poor student performance. That leads to more people taking their kids out of those schools, which just, as you said, it creates a cycle. And there's no way out of it once that starts.
Well, and again, this is why the competition argument, I'm just going to keep bringing up the competition argument the entire time this whole episode, fails miserably. Because then what happens when a school fails? The kids have to go somewhere else. And when those kids go somewhere else, it's the same kids that these conservatives do not want in their own schools. And that's a big problem. Because now you have all these kids who have nowhere to go. Because you just destroyed
their schools closed or consolidated, and they can't get accepted to the private schools because they don't meet their standards.
Well, and even worse,
or they get expelled immediately after they.
But that's what I'm saying. Is that even worse? Like the school can't get itself out of the spiral. There's just no way out, because the worse the school does, the more it gets penalized for it, and it will never be able to recover from it. There's no grit and gumption way of getting out of a failing school system. There's just not.
Especially when your funding keeps getting lower and lower every year.
Exactly. This isn't stand and deliver.
We'll just get Samuel L. Jackson and
do Coach Carter.
Who was stand and deliver?
I don't remember, man.
The captain from Battlestar Galactica, right?
I wouldn't know that either.
Edward James Olmos.
Say English things to me.
Never mind.
So why else are private voucher schools bad? Well, like Jason said before, they can legally discriminate against students who are LGBTQ or who have disabilities. Half of Wisconsin voucher schools reviewed by Wisconsin Watch, which is the provider of this article, which I highly recommend reading for anyone who's listening to this because it's fantastic reporting. Half of them had policies which explicitly called for discrimination of students who are LGBTQ+ or have disabilities. These materials often cited religious principles and lack of capacity. policy. Some handbooks stated that the schools would refuse enrollment if their families supported LGBTQ plus people, like in general.
Right. So if your mom has a rainbow avatar on Facebook, that's enough.
Or literally has an interview with the principal of the school, and they have to explicitly ask, so how do you feel about homosexuality? And they're like, love is love, I guess, let people be. They will not enroll them. Others had policies which called for the expulsion of students if their or their parents' conduct is supposedly contrary to the Bible. And that's where the story from this article comes from, where you had two girls from a Fox Valley school, I think it was a Lutheran school, and they were on the verge of graduating, both of them. They're both good students, ready to go, and they both get hauled in saying that the principal found out that they were in a relationship together and they were facing expulsion each.
And there was nothing the state could do about it.
Nope.
They ended up kicking them off of all of their extracurriculars, all of their sports teams.
Yep.
Probably not very manly, according to Matt Walsh. And another student appealed to the governor, who tried to do something about it, but did not have any power to do so based on the laws in our state. And that's why we need government-regulated schools. And yes, if you want to send your children to a discrimination factory, that's your right to do so, but you should pay for that out of your own pocket and should not come out of taxpayer dollars.
Absolutely. But it gets worse because, of course, it does. In records obtained from DPI, which is the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, a Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod pastor, or Wells, W-E-L-S, said he believes, quote, that lifestyles and current viewpoints of LGBTQ individuals clearly oppose the teachings of Scripture and therefore constitute sin that must be addressed. Within our circles, this guy says, we would say that this is not discrimination, but rather love practiced in the same way a parent would raise a child and announce harm when it is near. Just as an FYI, the WELS has 17 schools that are in Wisconsin's voucher program, all with explicit anti-LGBTQ plus policies.
And currently the only regulation, one, they do have to admit students that there's usually lotteries to get in. They can't deny them from being in that lottery based on these principles or values or whatever you want to call it. They can't discriminate in that way.
Right.
But once you're out of that part of it,
and you're in the school,
they can just be expelled immediately.
Well, and that's what these schools explicitly asked DPI. That's what's in the article as well. Because there are emails to and from DPI where this guy explicitly asked them, once they're in my school, can I expel them for being gay?
And they can.
And DPI had to say, well, once they're out of the voucher lottery and in your school system, they're considered in your school system and they will follow your handbook and your guidelines.
The only regulation is that the school has to have a policy for suspensions and expulsions. It doesn't say what that can be or can't be, just that the school has to have it.
Yep. And this is a huge problem for students with special needs. And I don't know if you have a lot of experience with this, Jason, but I know I have at least, where I know personally of how schools in Milwaukee, specifically voucher schools in Milwaukee, and you kind of actually hinted at this already, will constantly just expel students who are not doing good enough because
they bring down their scores.
Because they bring down the school scores.
Mm-hmm.
That happens all the time. They will not give them the proper resources. They don't have proper staff who are trained in special education. And then when the student becomes too much of a handful, they dump them on the street.
Or just they don't perform well. Because I've been to, unfortunately, school board meetings here in Muskego, which I think a lot of the school board members and parents here would be fine with all of these measures that are acceptable for these private schools. But that was the only thing they can present. That seems to be what everyone cares about, right? The test scores, the performance. It doesn't matter how the students are doing personally. It doesn't matter what their performance is after they leave the school. What does that actually translate to? That doesn't matter. It's just these are the numbers.
Yep.
And that's it. So if they can expel a couple dozen students and make those numbers go up, they're going to do that.
And as the Evers administration has said, there's nothing the government can do about it. And of course, they make things even worse. And Jason hinted at this as well. You really are messing up my timeline here. There's also private schools that are run for profit. And these schools will have huge marketing campaigns, hire underpaid and unqualified teachers who also don't have proper licensing that DPI would require, make their money through state funds or through, unfortunately, more even nefarious means like taxing the church itself and almost bankrupting it all the time, and then just pay off their board 6 to 7 figure salaries and then walk away. That's what they do all the time. There are multiple schools like that in Milwaukee alone. And during the pandemic, unlike public schools that were not eligible for PPP loans, private institutions pulled a George Santos and received public funds through their voucher program and also received millions of dollars through small business assistance because they're technically considered businesses. How about that?
It's a good grift.
And then, of course, since they are private and businesses, they don't report to the public the same way public schools do. There's no school boards. There may be like some kind of like small board of directors for this particular school or something, but usually they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, every corporation has a board of directors too. They're not answerable to anyone.
Right, exactly. And of course, private school education standards are literally all over the place.
They don't have government regulation. That's literally what the way we establish public schools in this country is, okay, we want a certain standard for our kids to be educated to. We want a certain standard for teachers to be educated to, where you, in order to be certified, you have to be able to meet this criteria. And in order to get a diploma, you have to be educated to this standard. That doesn't exist for private schools. It's just literally whatever they care to do, whatever curriculum they care to adopt, they're free to do so.
And a lot of that curriculum is obviously religiously based, anti-scientific, and super whitewashy. So this whole idea that kids are being indoctrinated in public schools is nonsense when you have schools that are being shown religious indoctrination materials as actual educational materials in these programs.
And I wanted to give a couple examples here where voucher programs are being used not only to continue the conservative war on public education, but also to continue the culture war.
Because of course they have to, because that's all they care about now.
The first one we're going to talk about, it's become kind of big news nationally. It's a school board in Colorado. This is not just private schools. This is the public schools too, because they took over the school board, but it does also include some charter involvement here, which is why I put it in here. But we're going to link to a couple of articles, one by Hemant Mehta, the Friendly Atheist. There's also an amazing NBC News article that was written about this situation in Colorado. But this is just to basically show what direction conservatives want to take education in this country. You have to remember, Donald Trump's education secretary was Betsy DeVos, who is the head of one of the largest school choice programs in the country.
Yep.
That has multiple foundations that push for these laws across the country. There were 15 GOP-led states that created or expanded voucher programs in the last 2 years alone. The person running education for the entire country was one of the biggest forces behind this school choice program.
She was also afraid of bears coming into schools.
She also thought that the kids needed to be armed to protect themselves from bears breaking into the classroom. But let's talk about this Colorado situation. It started when a Christian nationalist and anti-LGBTQ pastor of the Charis Bible College, Andrew Womack, told the members of his political group Truth and Liberty Coalition that they should take over the local school district of Woodland Park, Colorado, starting in 2021. Quote, "We have enough people here in this school, we could elect anybody we want. We could take over this place." And take over this place they did. After gaining a majority in the school board, they adopted conservative social studies curriculum American Birthright, which had previously been rejected by this Colorado State School Board as being too extreme and unfit for students.
Exactly what we were talking about before.
American Birthright materials emphasize patriotism, argue that the federal government should have no authority over public schools, and say teachers should not encourage civic engagement, such as registering to vote or petitioning local lawmakers on issues students care about. So don't engage. That's your civics class. Don't engage in civics.
I was going to say, Great civics class we got here. Don't participate, whatever you do.
The National Council for the Social Studies, a professional trade group for educators, issued a rare warning against using the material.
I believe just straight up calling it propaganda.
They also, and here's where it fits in with school choice, they established a charter school without giving proper public notice. They actually voted on establishing this charter school under an agenda title Board Maintenance at the school board meeting, and gave that charter school a third of the middle school building. This was Merit Academy, a, quote, classical education charter school.
What the hell does that mean?
That's what it says over and over and over again on their website.
Like
classical education.
Like you have nuns like hitting you with rulers or something like that? Like what's a classical education?
And it's run by Education Re-Envision. And they have multiple charter schools.
No, you can't have a classical education by a company that has re-envisioned education. That doesn't make... Oh, it doesn't make sense.
The lone school board member who was not up for election post the takeover, so the only one that was there previously, and the school superintendent both resigned over the new direction of the board. Former County Republican Party chair and financial donor to the board's vice president was appointed to fill the school board position, and Ken Witt was chosen to be the new school superintendent. Witt is the former president of the nearby Jefferson County School Board, who was recalled in 2015 after pushing for curricula that promoted patriotism and sought to reduce social strife, as well as consistently attacking the teachers' union. After his recall loss, Witt became the executive director of Education Re-Envisioned, the same company responsible for Merit Academy. Witt met privately with 3 school board members before he was hired, which is a violation of Colorado law that states that any meeting with 3 or more board members must be open to the public. And this was actually found out by an IT employee of the school district who had found the footage of the meeting while responding to open records requests. There is video, there is unfortunately no audio in that recording. That employee was fired by Witt after his position was consolidated, leading to the resignation of his boss in protest. So really open and honest school board. You got to be very transparent and not vindictive at all, and not petty. Witt declined to renew mental health grants totaling $1.2 million that covered the salaries of 15 positions, such as counselors, social workers, and career college readiness specialists.
I just want to make that very clear. He declined to just do it.
Right. Well, they don't care. They think any federal funding is also illegal anyway. It's the same as a lot of states, including Wisconsin. Well, actually, not even that many. It's only like 5 at this point, including Wisconsin, that refuse federal funding to expand Medicare coverage. Yep. It's the same thing. Like, we don't care if it hurts people here. We just don't believe in taxation, so we don't want to take federal funding.
Yep.
Same philosophy. And this is literally like, get rid of all the guidance counselors, get rid of any mental health professionals, college readiness specialists. Something that you would really want in a high school? Nope. Federal funding. Let's get rid of it.
So why would somebody do this?
Witt told staff members he prioritized academic achievement, not students' emotions. We are not the Department of Health and Human Services. Is his direct quote in a recorded meeting that you can listen to if you so choose.
Hey, at least when I read that, I can really tell that's a logical and rational person who cares about academic achievement and not emotion.
I just care about those numbers.
Jesus Christ.
I believe in that same, and again, you can go to it and listen to it, but in that same meeting, someone tearfully recounted their experience with these mental health positions that are going away, talking about when there was a murder-suicide that impacted a family in the school, that the counselors were there, that, she could get the help she needed, knowing that her kids would be taken care of while they were at school, and they had somebody to talk to because she couldn't be there for them, and she was really thankful, and it was like this really emotional thing. And Witt's response was, "Oh, so we had counselors at that time?" Yes, and it still happened anyway, right? That was his response to like audible gasps from the crowd that someone would be that heartless and cruel. But as we've said, I mean, that's all this guy has done so far. That also led to the resignation of the district's mental health supervisor, because obviously, and as teachers, students, and parents, even Republican parents, there's a lot of quotes in those articles, began protesting these decisions. The administration barred employees from discussing the district on social media. Free speech, everybody.
Of course.
At least 2 staff members who objected to the board's decisions were later forced out of their jobs, while another was fired for allegedly encouraging protests.
Fantastic.
And again, there's way more in the article. There's a bunch more teachers that resigned. I think there was something like 40% of the high school teachers were not planning to return next year. It is a giant mess.
Yep.
In that school district. Those exact things are what the school voucher school choice program is leading towards. Privatization of public schools, getting rid of all of these things like, mental health, we don't need it, woke agendas, adopting ridiculous conservative school curriculum, bashing teachers' unions. Like, I've seen it. I've seen it in the Muskego school. The Muskego school board hates teachers. They are open and honest about that in school board meetings. They despise and hate the teachers. It is insane. But let's talk about another example. We're going to talk about the Arizona Universal Voucher Program, otherwise known as ESA. It's an education spending allowance, I believe, something like that. The Arizona School Voucher Program started in 2011, and much like we talked about here in Wisconsin, where it starts off as this much more targeted, specific program, right? Like secular schools only, no funding going to private religious schools, and then eventually, once they get that foot in the door, it just keeps expanding until you're just privatizing education. It was targeted to students with disabilities so that they could gain access to services outside of the public school system. And again, just like here, that system has expanded to include more groups every year since its inception. And then Governor Doug Ducey has since been replaced with Katie Hobbs, and the Republican-led legislature forced through universal vouchers during budget negotiations in 2022, despite a referendum calling for the expansion of the program failing in 2018, with 64% of Arizonans voting against it. So they tried to do this exact same thing in a referendum in 2018. It failed with a 2/3 majority voting against it, and then they just did it anyway in 2022, 4 years later, as Ducey was going out the door. And this made it so that every single student in the Arizona public school system was eligible for a voucher system that could be used for any private school and also homeschooling. No additional funding to the school system was appropriated with this expansion, and costs have already topped $350 million, with 80% of participating students never having been previously enrolled in an Arizona public school. And that is a big point to talk about. Remember what we said, what's the best case scenario for school vouchers? It allows low-income families to have the choice to put their kids into better schools.
That's the whole point of this.
But in reality, that's not what happens.
Nope.
Instead, wealthy parents that already can afford to send their kids to private schools just take this as yet more income. They get more kickbacks from the government in order to fund their private education.
That they were already going to do anyway.
Yeah, that they can already afford. So again, it's just like all of the Republican tax breaks. Everything goes to the people that already make enough money to not need it.
Yep.
The rich get richer, and the schools
get
for
whiter.
the schools for the people that really could use some help get worse and get less funding. And they have less choice, not more, as the public school systems have to consolidate, and they lose schools because they don't have enough funding to keep them open. And again, the same thing that this whole system was designed to do in the 50s, you have increased segregation of white students moving away from inner city schools, and those inner city schools, they're already underfunded because it's usually tied to property taxes, and now they're losing the little funding that they get with these school voucher programs. And let's talk, I could not believe this when I saw this, by the way.
Yeah, let's talk about Charlie Kirk. I'm ready.
Charlie Kirk opened a school in Arizona. It's supposed to be multiple schools. I believe there's only one currently.
Oh, God.
Turning Point Academy. Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA, man with a very small face stuck on a very large balloon head, and a racist, bigot, misogynist, unapologetic, ultra-conservative, believes that the 2020 election was rigged against Donald Trump, believes in the Great Replacement Theory.
The whole shebang.
Yeah, everything we've ever talked about on this show, that's Charlie Kirk.
And has millions of dollars at his disposal.
Right, just has very, very rich conservative donors. He started Turning Point Academy in partnership with Dream City Christian Schools, and I don't know if you looked at this.
I didn't. I'm scared. I'm really scared.
Yeah, let's go to the website of this Turning Point Academy. Holy cow. And I advise everyone to look at this. First thing comes up when you open this website: train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6.
Oh my God.
Combat morally bankrupt and liberal ideology.
Jesus Christ. Evolutionism. Oh my.
58% of youth turn away from the church by age 18. At Dream City School, students pre-K through 12th grade will receive the tools and support they need to defend absolute objective truth.
To defend absolute... No way.
And what are they defending against? Critical race theory, evolutionism, gender identification.
Well, okay, so here's the thing, though.
So your kids are not going to learn history, science, or biology.
Okay, but here's the thing, though, Jason. The way they portray it is like they have like a list.
Yeah, it's like a check mark, but yeah, I think it should have been an X.
But the whole point is that they say the support they need to defend absolute truth, and then right below they have check marks that say critical race theory, evolutionism, and gender identification.
Right, it's confusing, but you know.
I know, but it sounds like they're trying to say like the objective truth is critical race theory.
Yes.
How stupid is this?
They need a different web designer. It looks like they support these things. Obviously, we know that not to be the case. Charlie Kirk. So I was helping them out by reading it in the way that they intend it to be read. But it also says, reclaim the agenda behind your child's education. We are on a mission to protect influential minds, or to indoctrinate influential minds. What are the tools your student needs?
There's the biblical worldview.
The tools your student needs to thrive in an ever-changing world. Foster biblical truths. Exploration of truth. Biblical worldview.
Protect our campus from the woke agendas. Oh my God.
Yeah, this is my favorite. Accurate U.S. history.
Oh, okay.
We believe America is the greatest nation ever to exist.
From the guy who tried to help write the 1776 report.
We will teach honest history that elevates our heroes and speaks openly about our failures.
Oh, will you?
Yeah, America is the greatest nation ever to exist. Our students will develop an understanding of what it means to be a biblical citizen.
What the hell's a biblical citizen?
And what is required to save this republic.
Oh my God.
Yep, that's Turning Point Academy. So yes, insane, crazy. I've also included a Washington Post article that I found, which I think is very interesting, talking about Charlie Kirk's he's not writing curriculum, right? He's not doing this.
Sure.
So of course they outsource all this stuff. And one of the partners that they were together with to try to create this curriculum for their school was Strong Mind, an education firm in Arizona. And again, they're also just like a subcontractor anyway. It seems like they deal with mostly packaging everything together and creating like software and the like basically the user interface that all of this is going to go into. A document circulated within Strong Mind where programmers had begun work on the project, noted plans to open the online academy by fall of 2022, which it is open currently, and assessed its potential to generate over $40 million in gross revenue at full capacity, which they considered to be 10,000 students.
What the hell?
And so it's not, again, it was meant to be multiple, not just one school. I believe they have one school that is open currently. But again, it shows this is an investment opportunity. This is
To make money.
yeah, for profit. All of these people involved are trying to make money. And I actually found a company that had morals, Joe, in this.
Oh, no.
The firm selected to help prepare the curriculum by StrongMind was Freedom Learning Group, which you would think just based on that name, they'd
That
be
sounds
all,
crazy.
all into it.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
An education company run by military spouses and veterans.
Okay.
Its chief executive, Elizabeth O'Brien, told the Washington Post in a text message when advised that the ultimate client, because again, they're going through a third party here, StrongMind, was Turning Point USA, we notified the curriculum developer that we are terminating the contract. So even Freedom Learning Group is like, wait, who? Charlie Kirk? No. We can't be part of that. So I thought that was fun. They lost their investor because they couldn't outsource it to the company that they normally use because they found out that it was crazy people that were running it. So whatever fraction of 40 million that they were going to get in this deal was not enough. So good for Freedom Learning Group in turning that down. But just to remind you, this school is open and currently receiving public taxpayer funding in Arizona.
Hooray. Good job, Arizona. You did it. But I also want to try to dispel the myth of, okay, so maybe competition sucks. Maybe you just want to have some choice for your kid. Fine. But do students who use voucher programs actually get a better education? Well, according to Josh Cunningham, a senior education policy specialist with the National Conference of State Legislatures, and if you don't know what that is, that's basically just the gigantic organization or I don't know what to call it, union, I guess you'd say, of state representatives.
Don't say union.
Yeah, right. Of state representatives all throughout the country. Quote, at the most I can say maybe a little bit, but there's not a lot of evidence that they'll actually have any substantial academic gain. And going off of him, there is some earlier research that shows that voucher programs have either a neutral or slightly positive effect on attending or graduating college. We're not going to talk about test scores because we all know that's stupid, but at least maybe to go to college, that could be something. And at least it shows that's maybe a couple percentage points better. Hooray. However, in 2023, Pianta and Ansari did a longitudinal study where they looked at over 1,100 kids in both public and private schools, and they found that there is no difference between students who attend public versus private schools. What actually made the difference between the different students? Family income, socioeconomic status, education level of the parents. That's what made the difference. If you have rich parents that can afford to give you lots of resources, you'll do all right.
And that's in these charter and private schools, they specifically target those students because they know this to be true.
Right. And in that same study, they found that low-income children did not perform any better in a private school than in a public school. And Jason kind of already talked about this with Arizona, but I think it's worth repeating again. It all comes down to universal school choice. This is what they want at the end of the day. This is what Republicans were pushing for with Tim Michaels in Wisconsin during the midterms in 2022. So just remember that the whole point of this was supposed to be allowing low-income families to have the opportunity to go find better pasture somewhere else. The actual point of this whole plan is to give wealthy families the ability to use taxpayer money, your money, to attend private, mostly religious schools to receive no better education, but with way more costs, and also get tons of religious indoctrination and crazy, apparently Turning Point's garbage.
And no government oversight.
That is what school choice actually gets you. And in the meantime, the vast majority of students and children who require and need public schools to flourish and thrive and have a better life overall are given less options, less choice, and forced into horrible economic situations where they can't get out of.
Essentially, instead of funding one public school system that is open for everyone and regulated by the government, by the people, you end up funding two systems, one of which can discriminate, does not fall under the same regulation that public schools do, and does not have any accountability to elected officials. And it ends up destroying the public school system. But that's the point. It's not like that's an unfortunate side effect. That is the goal of these programs is to destroy public schools, because ultimately this is about getting rid of taxes going to public schools. This is the school choice system. The modern school choice system was the brainchild of Milton Friedman, a libertarian. So that's what this is about. This is about the taxes. They want to get rid of the public school system because they're sick of funding it. They can afford to send their kids to private school. That's what the end goal of this is to crush the public education system because it's expensive and because that money comes out of taxes. And this is the easiest way to do it, the way that's most acceptable, the way that gets the most support from the public, is setting up these school vouchers, school choice programs to strangle public education.
For no benefit.
Well, to benefit their pockets.
Well, sure. Okay. Outside of that.
Yeah, outside of giving more money to already wealthy people,
That's it.
no benefit.
So if anyone ever tries to tell you that school choice is a good thing, send them this episode and call them out on their BS, because that's what it is. There is no such thing as competition in education. The goal has been all along to take equal opportunity away from a ton of students and put it in the hands of a few. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. In fact, if anything else, their pupil. If anything else, their per pupil. If anything else, their per pupil funding goes down because students are being God damn it, I suck. To flourish and fly.
Wow.
Wow, man.